I'm Ben Ryman, and this is Behavior Speak. In today's conversation, Dr. Buket Kısaç Demiroğlu engages in a deep conversation about autism services in Turkey, exploring the development of behavior analysis in the country, the current state of ABA, and the cultural perspectives surrounding autism. The discussion highlights the challenges faced by families, the importance of teacher training, and the future goals for behavior analysis in Turkey. The episode concludes with reflections on the rich culture of Turkey and the potential for growth in autism services. Welcome to the podcast, Buket.
Thank you.
Yeah, grateful to have you here. Before we get started, I just want to acknowledge I am producing this podcast on the soil and territories of the Kalaman, Klehus, Homoko, and Comox First Nations, who have been here since time immemorial, and I am grateful to be here. So, Buket, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, Ben, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to have conversation with you now. If I want to introduce myself, I am Buket. I'm a faculty member of special education at Zonguldak Bülent Ecevit University. I know it's a long name. And I earned my master's degree and PhD from the University of Pittsburgh. And I have been a BCBA for 9 years. And my work generally focusing on designing, implementing evidence-based practices by increasing social communication skills for children with autism.
Okay. And so tell me a little bit how you got into the field.
Well, if someone had told me in 2007 I would be a professor in ABA and autism field, I probably wouldn't believe that because I was simply pursuing an elementary education major and I was doing a master's degree in the same field at the time. And I had zero knowledge of ABA or autism, not even a single strategy I knew at the time. But when I was doing master, I had a chance to work in autism classroom. And it was real struggle for me because I had no skills to help them. And I was really curious about it. I wanted to develop and learn about it. And I discovered that Minister of Education was providing scholarships for studying abroad. I thought this is a great opportunity for me. I work hard. I got the scores and I got the scholarship for autism education specifically. And my journey has started in the US. And actually, I was so lucky to meet with Dr. Stephen Lyon. He was my advisor at the University of Pittsburgh. So he taught me how to be educator and how to be researcher. And I had a chance to work in many settings. But during this process, the real challenge was English for me. I'm sorry, if I am making any pronunciation mistakes. I haven't been speaking for a long time. I do remember when I arrived in the US, my English wasn't fluent at the time. And I knew only 2 sentences. I was able to confidently say 2 sentences. First, my name is Buket. And the second, I love chocolate. Well, these are the very helpful survival skills, but it didn't help me for my research and the courses. So yeah, I really did a lot of hands-on experience, work really hard, and I ate a lot of chocolate in the process. And then I became a BCBA, and then I finished my PhD. Now I'm in Turkey. I'm a faculty member now here.
Amazing. And so when did you come back to Turkey?
Well, I should have come back because the scholarship I got, there was we have a contract. I should come back to my country to serve and to educate special education teachers here. So I stay 7 years in USA. I should make it double. So I'm gonna work 14 years, but there's a few years left, just 8 years. So to finish, yeah.
So you're saying the scholarship that allowed you to go to the U.S. to get the training requires that you work double the time you spend in the U.S. back in Turkey, providing that sort of education to folks over here.
Yes, exactly.
And so you're 6 years in, you've got 8 to go.
Yes.
And do you think you're going to go back to the US after, or do you think you'll stay?
I love to do that. But I now I have a husband and a child, so I don't know how I'm gonna do that. So we'll see. Maybe one day I will be back. But I really miss Pittsburgh a lot.
Sure. 2007, you're working in a classroom setting. You don't even know what autism is. You kind of start doing your training and learn a little bit about autism, start working in an autism classroom. So this is 2007. Can you tell me a little bit about sort of maybe what autism services were like then and sort of what the history of kind of autism is in Turkey?
Yeah, sure. I guess 20 years ago, ABA we have started to use ABA in classrooms, but we didn't have so much special education teachers, so the use of ABA was limited. Over the years, however, we made a lot of progress. For example, in 2010, there were only 15 universities providing training for special education. So they were training special education teachers. But now we have 65 universities, and total we have 200 university in our country. So half of them have the special education programs right now. So there are more special education to serve children with disabilities now. So its availability increased. And also academicians they really made great effort to disseminate ABA here. They made research, they publish both in English and Turkish, and they organize international conferences in Turkey. They brought experts from the US, especially about ABA. In this way, public awarenesses about ABA increase and the use of ABA in the settings are increased. Many public schools and private clinics, they are using ABA right now.
So, well, that's a lot. So when 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 you became a BCBA, or sorry, or even before you became a BCBA, were there BCBAs in Turkey at that time, or were you the first?
There was only one BCBA at the time when I was become a BCBA. Now
Hmm.
we are three BCBAs right now in Turkey.
Just three now. Wow. Okay. Okay. Amazing. Not a lot. And was that first BCBA that was there before you? Were they also from Turkey?
Yes,
Yeah.
but she
Okay.
moved to
Gotcha.
US after uh, before I came back to Turkey. She wasn't in Turkey anymore.
So right now there's only three BCBAs in Turkey.
Yes.
You said that sort of special education training has made it into
20
close to
years.
half the university in the last 20 years in about 65 universities. What about ABA programs? Are there ABA programs in Turkey? Do you have a credential with the International Behavior Analysis Organization, the Qualified Applied Behavior Analysis Credentialing Board, the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, or would like a certificate of attendance for another organization? You can earn continuing education units by going to www.behaviorspeak.com, clicking on CEUs, and entering the three secret words. The first secret word is Muslim.
Actually, every special education uh, training program has ABA courses right now. We have only one graduated program for specifically ABA. There's only one. So if you want to do master in ABA, so you should apply that university. You don't have another option for that one. But for like now you cannot be BCBA from another country unless you are from United States, Canada, or we are now. For example, I'm an approved course provider for IBT now for IBAO.
Mm.
So I'm hoping that the exam will be translated into Turkish. I heard that it is on way, and then the Turkish people have more access to these credentials in the following years. Hopefully, yeah, little by little.
And so, just to clarify, you said there's three, right, BCBAs. And so, if there's ABA in a lot of the programs, and there's actually a full ABA graduate program, how come there's only three of you?
So they didn't like, as you know, like they read the textbook or they got the education from US or the other countries. They brought this knowledge to Turkey. That happened like that. And then there are really great academicians, but they don't have BCBAs here, but they know what is ABA exactly and how to use it. So in that way, they will able to disseminate these practices, like ABA practices here.
I see. So there are a lot of folks that are trained and competent in ABA. They just haven't gotten the certification.
Yes.
I see. And so what do ABA services look like right now in Turkey?
Well, government funds special education and rehabilitation centers, and they give 2 hours of intervention per week for children with disabilities. But it is insufficient for meaningful progress for them. And it's not basically like, it doesn't say ABA services because it's not funded, or it's not, there's no insurance covering kind of like the ABA education. Uh, this is the issue for us. So if you want to get ABA exactly, you need to go private clinics. They are giving ABA services, and you need to make payments for them.
Okay.
Fortunately, so it's not still access to free access is limited, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, maybe let's I think you've said there's 200 universities, seems to be a lot of training. There seems to be a lot of
Can I tell
yeah,
about my research if
please.
you don't mind? For example,
Yeah, please.
yeah, my colleagues and I did a research. How does ABA application look like in classrooms right now? And we interview special education teachers, and we asked what is ABA and what ABA strategies they use and what are the challenges they face during the implementation. So one of the teachers say, ABA, it is when you use extinction, right? I was like, okay. So ABA as if it's a fancy word for ignoring behaviors. And most of the teachers say they use extinction a lot. And they were referring ABA as problem behavior management techniques. Not they just think out like they don't think like the teaching the social communication skills can be part of this ABA. A few of them address this, but generally they say problem behavior management techniques they were talking about when we ask what strategies they use. And the challenges are staff availability. For example, there are 2 staff and 8 students in the classroom. So they say we don't have time to use ABA in classrooms. We cannot do one-on-one instruction. We cannot observe data or record data. A lot of problem behaviors are occurring at the time, and I don't have time to do all of them at the same time. So I was thinking that after this research, evidence-based practices are really great, but if you can actually use them in your conditions, like you don't have the enough staff member, you have more than expected, you have students, a lot of students in your classroom, you have lack of resources and lack of support, even of administrative support. Like some administrative, they don't support the use of ABA. So because of these issues, they have hard time to apply what they know. So it doesn't matter or how to apply it. It's useless because you cannot use in your classroom. I feel like it's like a recipe. You have the best chef, but only you have a plastic spoon and microwave. Go ahead and cook that 5-star meal now. I mean, you don't have the resources in your classroom, so it's make it not impossible, but make it difficult to apply it. I am thinking like for our case, based on my research, I see that we need to look at practice-based evidence, not evidence-based practice here. So how we can adapt these strategies to make it work in these classrooms. Maybe we will, instead of doing the one-on-one instruction, we can do small group work, and we can do prevention strategies a lot. Then they will have time to teach other like necessary skills. So many things we can consider, but it's really important. So if you don't have the enough resources, how you're going to apply these evidence-based practices? I think most of the countries have this similar issues.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that difference, practice-based versus evidence-based practice. So tell me a little bit more about some of this research you've been doing.
Yeah, sure. I am doing, like, for example, the last one, I teach parents how to require, like, teaching banding to their children. And it was really great one. And they say they didn't feel that they gave the enough opportunities to men. So, for example, their child wants to get water, but they didn't give that chance. They just give the water as soon as I understand them. So they learn how to use prompt and transfer. So I use the verbal behavior technique over there. So they were able to implement it very accurately and very easily. So it was a really great one. And I'm hoping that I'm going to publish that one soon if I can write it as soon as possible. And the
Yeah, yeah,
other
yeah.
research I got for a actually, I am head of the research and practice center for special education at my university. So we are trying to develop projects to improve the lives of children. And one of the projects we apply and receive ABA international grant. Yes, that was really a great opportunity. My topic was verbal behavior approach over there. In Turkey, there are 2 or 3 private clinics. They use verbal behavior here. Public schools, they have no knowledge about it. Special education teachers and training programs, they don't include verbal behavior in their program. So I went to public school, autism classroom, elementary age kids, and I taught teachers and give coaching them how to apply verbal behavior components like math training, pairing with reinforcement, errorless teaching, mixing verbal operands and task difficulties. So they learn how to do the intensive instruction with their child, and actually the rate of math skills are really increased in children. So it was really great. So
Amazing.
I am hoping that I'm going to expand application in other schools as well because it's just one school
So
right now.
that's really cool. And so what was sort of the feedback from the school by introducing sort of this sort of really a new method for them?
So they say, oh, we didn't see kind of approach before. Like we didn't think that even if like errorless teaching, like prompt, transfer, distract, and check, they really like it and that's the structure thing. And they were like adapting to their other students as well. I was seeing and they were getting the progress. We didn't only focus on math. I just did focus on for my research. We include tag, interverbal, listen responding to other verbal operants, weighted the assessment. And the good thing is recently VBMAP translated into Turkish language. So yeah, that was a great opportunity for supporting teachers to learn and apply verbal behavior in their classroom. So I was like, oh, that's going to be great. So they can use the assessment, then we can teach based on the assessment. Yep, they really like it, and they're still using it in the classroom. They are sometimes taking picture and sending it to me.
Right. That's amazing. And tell me kind of more about some of the work you've been doing with teachers. You said when we talked last time, you said you had supervised a lot of teachers all over Turkey.
Yes, I had a chance to go to maybe 4 or 5 different settings. These are all the private settings. I supervise them and I try to show how we can analyze the behavior. Because when I do the observation, I realize that okay, they are doing some good things. They are following the procedures, but analyzing part is missing in our country. Like there's applied behavior, but analyzes parts wasn't done correctly. So they couldn't see what are the barriers to learning. For example, there is a difficulty with attention, problems in attention, but they're still trying to give prompt to child to get the response and reinforcing, not giving the attention to the materials. It was a huge thing. And also stimulus control issues over there. They were teaching something, but they were giving some clue and they weren't aware of that. So we were trying to get together and I'm trying to explain, okay, what is happening here? What do you need to do? And I was trying to improve my supervision skills. So I need to go step by step. So I shouldn't tell all of them in one day. So it was really great to see what teachers really know and what they are applying. But most of the things they are applying is structure approach. I observed that naturally developmental behavioral interventions are really great. I mean, I like to apply it, but they don't have confidence to apply it. I mean, they feel more confident in applying structure approach. They say, okay, tell me what to do, show me what to do, I will do it. But when it comes to come natural thing, it was like, what I'm gonna say now? What I'm gonna do? How I'm gonna play now? So
Sure.
yeah, actually, I have difficulty at first, but with practice and feedback, you can improve these skills over time.
I'm curious about sort of what kind of does sort of diagnosis look like for autism in Turkey, and then and how does that sort of lead to services? Are doctors recommending ABA? Are they recommending other things? What does that look like?
The diagnosis of autism increase, the awarenesses of increase. For example, I can tell one research in 2015, they asked if they have heard of autism before, and 29% of people say yes at the time. And they did the research again in 2021, and now 72% of people say yes, they
Wow.
heard about autism. Yes. But however, awarenesses doesn't mean always understanding, because they ask if individuals with autism can be educated. In 2015, 18% of people say yes, and in 2021, only 23% of people say yes.
Wow.
So there
Not
was
much of a
a
jump. Yeah.
increase. So they didn't think it can be educated.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, awarenesses are increased, but still we need to show, I guess, models. Oh, see, like the people with autism can find a job, or can they live their life.
Is there like some stigma around autism? What do families typically do? Do they end up sort of staying with them for the rest of their lives? Do they end up in institutions? What's sort of the prognosis for someone with autism in Turkey?
Yeah, sure. In the past, there were much more stigma about autism. Over the years, it get better. I mean, many people now taking their child to go to playground, or trying to include their child in the community settings. But some parents, they don't want to get diagnosis. They just avoiding, because they don't think that this will prevent from opportunities, for example, for education and employment. So they will not going to get a job because they have autism, that their child has autism. So they just have some fears about their child's future. That's why they don't want to get a diagnosis. And there's a cultural belief also. I don't know if you have this similar. Boys speak at a later age than the girls. Generally, they have to speak later than the girls, and that's why they wait and they don't go any evaluation for like if there's a problem or not. Early intervention is not going well in terms of this. Like the child, it comes to age 5 and they get diagnosis, and as you know, if it was a 2 years old or 2.5, they will get better by 5. But most parents, they wait. They just say, okay, let's see. Maybe when he go to the uh, care, I mean the not school, child care, they will
Yeah.
like kindergarten, they will start to speak, because most parents believe that the kindergarten will help their child in speaking, so they don't ignore speech delay in this case. But after the child care and the preschool, they just see, okay, we need to accept that. And some of our colleagues, like even if like they know special education, I know some of my friends, they just avoid getting diagnosis. They just getting private courses for their child, private therapy, but they just don't want to get any diagnosis.
The second secret word is Jasper.
And why is that?
Because of the stigma and because of the education. For example, if the child comes to age of elementary age, he didn't want to give an inclusion class. And inclusion is kind of different in our country.
I see.
So, but he needs to get some.
So in some ways, having a diagnosis, for some families, they believe that limits their children because by having an autism diagnosis, they're not going to be included in the classroom. They're not going to get the education that the other kids are getting. And so instead they do private therapy for behaviors or skill building, but they don't sort of tell the schools that and hope they can be included. Wow.
And
That's
also,
wild.
I just want to say, for example, our nephew has autism. He's 10 years
Okay.
old now, and he's high functioning. We have the laws supporting the education of individuals with disabilities. For example, for early intervention, it's mandatory for children with disabilities. But for typically developing children, they don't need to. It's not a mandatory preschool. But in Turkey, if you have basic education, like if you have a diagnosis and in the school know this, and if you have problem behaviors, they may not want you in the school. And it happened to our nephew because of his problem behaviors when he was 5 years old. Teacher and the school principal didn't want him to be part of this school. And even if like we gave someone to help him in the process, he was kind of like the guiding him to reading and the other activities, but the teacher didn't want him. Basically, I don't want him. Like the family
I
is
see.
also, they were like, my daughter is really afraid of your nephew. I was like, so it's really so difficult, and the principals
Yeah.
are hearing these things, and he say, I'm sorry, and he excluded him from school. But according to law, it shouldn't be. But you like to make this case to the courts, you're gonna wait long time. So in this time, our nephew is gonna lose the time for education. So we went to the private clinics then. We didn't have it. So this is happening a lot. I mean, even if there's awarenesses, because of a lack of teacher training and a lack of resources, they say they just don't wanna try. Some teacher, I'm sorry, but they just say it's better if you go to special education school, not here.
Yeah. So that's a real gap, and so that I guess that's some of the work you're trying to do around educating teachers more about ABA and sort of the possibilities, so that maybe they'll be more inclined to keep these students.
Exactly. Well, they need to be part of this community. Isolated. But by the way, he's really great at speaking English. He's speaking exactly better than me. And
Wow.
he loves to learn another languages. He's working on Spanish,
Wow.
Arabic. I don't know why he's interested in, and also Korean. Like he really interested in learning languages, and he's really great about it. Even if his like it English teacher say I am not enough for him, she's saying. So he is really doing
Wow.
right now. Actually, he's in the 5th grade, and his academic scores are really great. But we are struggling for social parts, so we are working on it.
So he knows more English than his English teacher.
Exactly. Yes,
Wow.
he is really speaking
That's
so
amazing.
fluently. Sometimes he tells me something I just didn't know the word. I was like, "What is that?" But he really knows. I hope maybe he will come to US one day.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm really
certainly.
hoping.
Well, a skill in multiple languages could take him really far in life.
Yes.
Can you tell me, so interesting hearing about sort of the education system in Turkey and some of the work you're doing. Can you tell me a little bit about Turkey itself? I don't know much about Turkey. I don't really actually even know exactly where it is and sort of what the culture is like and some of those things for our listeners.
Yes, sure. Turkey is a really a great place for, how can I say, it's not a kind of Middle East. It's like the Sultan way. Like you may see people with like me, like wearing the hijab and not to wear the hijab, and it's kind of the secular country. They say, okay, it's up to you. Like whatever you choose, you can get it, you can do it, and the people are really so how can I say, hospitality is really important here. If you come to our country and if you say hello to someone, they will like respond to you and they will try to help you a lot. So they will
Mm-hmm.
bring you some tea. Tea is really important for us.
Yes.
So I mean, like we have really great things like the for Turkish culture, but some how can I say about our culture is I say like the stigma, like if you have some disability, this can be feeling the make you feel guilty about it. It is your responsibility or something because of you it happened. There's such kind of like the core beliefs still with us, and I can see that, and that's why they are trying to hide, especially fathers. For example, always we talk with mothers. They just don't want to talk with us, fathers. They don't want to be included in that part. We are asking, okay, what do you think about your child? Mother will deal with that, and they will try to stay away from that. And they don't want to accept the disability. Also, they have much more hard time to accept that. So what else I can tell are my country? I'm thinking, yeah, ask me any question. I'm just like,
Well, I'm curious. Well, before I want to ask a little bit more about the culture, but just a bit on sort of that your point about fathers being less involved than mothers, and sort of maybe not buying into the diagnosis or not wanting to be a part of, those conversations. I'm thinking about a lot of my listeners, will be listening to this conversation, to learn a bit about Turkey and about you, but also to learn maybe more about how they can work with some of the Turkish families that they may be supporting outside of Turkey. And I imagine this is something they're probably going to run into quite often, is sort of if they're in a two-parent home, that the mother will be the one sort of doing most of the interaction and most of the work. Are there sort of ideas on sort of how clinicians might be able to get fathers more involved?
grandparents. Generally, the grandparents are included, and they are good at make them the included in the part. If I talk with them, I had such an experience, and the father was trying to come to the place, and they were kind of like listening their grandparents a lot. So they are kind of like for example, I was telling the mom, okay, why you are not getting more time for your education, your child? So she was getting only 2 hours, and she said to me, uh, like mother-in-law didn't allow them to get more hours. It will be enough. So they make the decision, and that's it. So it's kind of like the cultural thing, like that they have really worked for their child's education or for their child's any decision in their life. So I will probably will talk with grandparents to include fathers.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, I think with a lot of different cultures and folks from different countries, we think that we should only sort of focus on the parents, and often the grandparents and other family members can really play an integral role.
But yes, most of them, they have really worked. Like they said something, and the parents, like the father and mother, is generally agree with them. And it's still maybe our new generation doesn't wanna listen, but I guess the past generation, and I am still listening them.
Well, I think that's common with a lot of cultures, the sort of respect for elders and
Yes.
and sort of the value of elders is big in a lot of cultures. So that makes a lot of sense.
And also they are included, like they want to really come and to see how they are get educated and what procedures I am applying. Like they want to see, and they bring the kid to the clinic or the setting. So yeah, they always included in the process.
So you were starting to compare Turkey a bit to sort of, maybe other countries in the Middle East as being maybe a little more secular, maybe a little more liberal in terms of sort of how folks can sort of choose. You said some folks wear the hijab, some don't. There's probably folks practicing maybe different religions and different traditions, and that maybe is more acceptable. What is sort of the makeup sort of culturally and ethnically in Turkey? Are folks mostly Muslim?
Yes, 90% of people are Muslims. I mean, as far as I know, from the literature, the majority of the Muslims. Yeah.
And you have at least I understand sort of from news reports and whatnot, it seems like you maybe have a lot of refugees coming into Turkey. Is that true?
We had a lot of refugees. For example, in my city,
Yeah.
there are a lot of refugees, and they are really settled down in here. They really like to be here, and they feel confident, I mean, secure. And the government also giving a lot of funding for them, kind of like for health, for education. So they have rights for their basic needs. So they feel secure here. So it's why they want to be here, I guess.
Are these primarily refugees from Syria or from other countries too?
Generally Syria, but we have other Turkish communities. I forgot the English terms, but from other countries as well. I'm sorry, I forgot that.
And so mostly Muslim, and so I suppose there's probably a lot of folks celebrating and practicing Ramadan right now.
Yes. So we are on the 12th, 13th day of Ramadan right now. So the half of the Ramadan is almost over. So we have 15 days more to celebrate the Ramadan. It's gonna be Eid Mubarak then. They say Eid Mubarak.
Tell me a little bit about just I wanted to go back a little bit to some of your doctoral work kind of before we finish off, because you've been talking a lot about sort of verbal behavior. So tell me a little bit about kind of your training and the focus on verbal behavior and your dissertation and that kind of work.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks to my advisor, Steven Lyon, I asked him because I was coming from elementary education, I want to get hands-on experience a lot. So thanks to his guidance, I went to many settings. For example, one of them was PLE, and I learned precision teaching over there, and I really love it. And then I went to the PACE. I learned verbal behavior, which then became a topic for my dissertation. I was really interested in I'm still interested in verbal behavior. And what I did, sometimes I had a research, for example, teaching tacting fluency to see if I teach tacting at fluent levels, it is going to be easier for the interverbal acquisition. So it really helped for children to acquire interverbals in a few sessions. Then I was kind of okay, that was a good research, but I will do right now. I want to include peers and have conversation with them. But the conversation topic didn't want to be not a robotic, they don't want to memorize a script. So it will be much more natural and it will be based on their preferred topic. I prepare a structured conversation script first. And from there, because initially they needed something to what they are going to say. They didn't know how to converse with each other. So in a public school, I went in Pittsburgh and I brought a child with autism with a peer with typically child, and he was classmate, and they talk about superheroes and they talk about dogs, like the favorite animal they have. So it was a really great opportunity to see, and I really kind of like to have a part of inclusion is really beneficial. So I want to see how I can apply these intervention inclusion setting. So it worked. I mean, I had 2 students with autism. Unfortunately, the third one need to leave to the complicated. I did the study with 2 of them, and they got the good results about interverbals. So, yep, that was it.
Really cool. Really cool. And you also mentioned that you did a bit of training in precision teaching and then also in some of the NDBIs like Jasper and ESDM.
ASTM, yep. I really want to learn how we can teach play to children with autism. So I learned how to use a Jasper and Eurostat Dammer model, and I really love it especially for early intervention part. So like the routine based instruction, how we can teach them using that routines. Now I'm trying to give some webinars and trying to teach other undergraduate students in other universities. For example, in the following May, I have a webinar in a conference, actual workshop, I'm sorry, and I will teach them how we can integrate play through using Jasper or the Start Denver model to teach social communication, to teach executive function skills. So we can use these approaches for variety of for many skills. I'm sorry, I couldn't pronounce that one.
Yeah. And do you see, I mean, I imagine some of the reasons you sort of focused on some of these areas was because of, the value you thought it might bring when you came back home. And so do you see sort of NDBIs and, Jasper, ESDM and that sort of thing as potentially, being acceptable and working well in Turkey?
The last secret word is hospitable.
Yes, actually, recently, I guess 2 months ago, the good news is the ESDM the Kısaç Demiroğlu translated into Turkish language. So they will
Okay,
have
cool.
access to that book and with the assessment tool. So they really care natural language. I mean, the NDBI, like some my colleagues, especially, they do a lot of good work about it. And I think if we do more research and show them that, hey, it is working, they will use it more a lot. And as you know, I'm not saying like the specifically one is better than the other, but I'm saying like what is best for the child. If we knew not one strategy, if I only knew verbal behavior, now how I'm gonna teach the other students? Maybe verbal behavior approach is not gonna work for others. So I need to be able to select the best one for that child. What's gonna work
Mm,
for him. So I need to have a really I need to have the knowledge of the interventions to be able to analyze and pick one for them.
sure. And then the nice thing, I guess, about the NDBIs is it does allow you to sort of include everybody and
In the process, yes, in the teaching.
yeah, yeah. Neat, neat. A lot of cool things happening. And so what are sort of, you've kind of touched on it a bit already, but what are sort of some of your maybe more long-term goals for your work in Turkey in behavior analysis?
Yeah, sure. I don't have plan to slow down exactly, but I really want to disseminate evidence-based practices. For me, just some parents don't trust ABA practices because of misunderstanding and misapplication. They think that floor time or sensory integration therapy are better than the ABA, and then some psychologists are also don't say they say like they bring a child to get ABA. They say like they get robotic and they just do make the child 3 year old child make the sit on the chair. Doesn't mean I mean it doesn't have the child. So I really understand their point because because of there's misapplication issues over there. So I will try to do my best in terms of making what is working for them, not like practice-based evidence. What is practice-based evidence for us in public schools, especially? I just want to focus on that part right now.
I think that's something I'm hearing a lot from behavior analysts in countries outside of North America where maybe there aren't a lot of behavior analysts and they're trying to sort of, in the early days of sort of introducing ABA to folks, that a lot of the misinformation and misapplication, particularly some of the things that we see online, have really created a barrier for kind of buy-in to services in these countries. It's a hard road kind of coming back and showing folks, the truths. Buket, it's been fascinating learning from you, learning about your work, your history, your story, your passion, learning about Turkey and culture and some of the really kind of cool things happening there. It sounds like a fascinating place and definitely a place I want to visit because it sounds pretty hospitable. And I'm hoping, and I'd love to have a cup of tea with you sometime. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, please come to Turkey. You will not going to regret. I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it, and it was really great to talking with you. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed learning more about Turkey in today's conversation. For similar conversations on the Behavior Speak podcast, check out episode 15, Behavior Analysis in Egypt with Radwa Eltanab, episode 78, where Abdullah Bernier discusses the lived experiences of Syrian refugee parents of autistic children, episode 94, Behavior Analysis in Qatar and Lebanon with Rola El Anan, and episode 149, Behavior Analysis in Saudi Arabia with Dr. Shahad Al-Sharif. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please follow us on Instagram @BehaviorSpeak.